Okay, there we are. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Good afternoon, everybody. Happy New Year. The first musically minded of the year. It's New Year's Day. We're in recovery mode. I'm not overhung myself. We definitely got a nice little drink on and had a lot of fun last night doing our spooky New Year's party. Had some friends by and had a lot of friends showing up for the show and in chat. And I'm seeing some of you showing up in chat over here. Syrinx Star, speaking of which, Syrinx is going to be joining us for the first Retro Rumpus of the year. That'll be Saturday. Of course, I'm here with Diana, DJD42, your hostess with the mostesses. What's feeding back? Okay.
I'm muted, but when I unmute it.
Oh, you don't need to use that. You're on this microphone.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, Diana is actually live in the house here, so we've got her mic'd up, so we don't need to use the computer microphone. Dusty Chin in the house, good to see you. Tans Machina in the house. MX, I don't know how to say it, but it's good to see you too. Thanks for joining us today for Musically Minded, where we take a peek behind the curtain of the DJ world, and of course we will answer questions from the chat. I'm hoping that we'll see Frantic joining us soon. They mentioned that they wanted to ask some questions this week too. And of course, last week's show and the previous shows, the previous few episodes are all up on YouTube as well. So check that out. I was introducing to you DJD42, Diana, your hostess with the mostesses, and she takes care of us every week in the chat, and it joins me every week for Musically Minded, and she has some very important news of her own, something cool coming up. Would you please tell us about that, Diana?
I may have been invited to be on Space Couch on Sunday, January 8th.
There you go. So that means that Diana is going to be leaving us about halfway through Musically Minded to get ready for that. And of course, we'll be raiding right on over to Space Couch next week. It's the first Space Couch of the new year, and it's the first Space Couch back after the hiatus there, right? So that's a pretty awesome thing. And oh well, I'm sure we'll be talking. I'm sure that you and Brian will be talking about MTV TV a fair amount. And of course, we've got New Music O'Clock this week, hosted by Brian Gropner as well. It's the Tiger Squawk Takeover, and that's going to be cool. And I believe we've got something special from Syrinx in that set. They're keeping it under lock and key until the last minute on us. It's pretty awesome. Got our work cut out for us over the next couple of days to get that show all together and get ready. So do join us for New Music O'Clock on MTV TV, as you do every Wednesday, and thank you for supporting MTV TV. And of course, that is the thing that is well, it's a huge part of what we're doing. It's and so we especially appreciate your support there on Patreon. And I did recently start a Patreon of my own for the kind of things that we're doing. So if you wouldn't mind supporting me there, patreon.com/Addambombb, probably, right? Something like that. And yes. You know, we're just going to keep on doing these things. We are going to take off the weekend, Saturday the 21st and 22nd. I have to get a biopsy in my lung, and they got to do the bronchoscopy, and it's going to suck. So I'm going to take a couple of days off there, but we won't be missing any New Music O'Clocks or anything. And Syrinx is going to be joining us for Retro Rumpus as well. Labyrinth, great to see you. Syrinx is going to be joining us for Retro Rumpus. I think I mentioned that already. This coming Saturday.
Yeah.
We're very excited for that. All right, so getting into Musically Minded, as I said, I want to see the questions coming up in the chat there. So if you do have questions about the DJing stuff, the behind the scenes stuff, the music stuff. If you have questions about any of the rabbit holes that we have run down in previous shows, drop them up in the chat here. Of course, you can also ask me questions on Patreon or Facebook Messenger and that kind of stuff too. We had a really good discussion led off by Tans Machina last week. And one of the things that we did want to talk about last week was that IFL Science article. You want to catch us up on that one? And that we'll get started with that today, because I thought that was a pretty interesting little peek into the human brain, and it relates very much to what we were talking about in it comes up, I think, in every episode, but musical histories.
Yes.
We did dive into that a bit in one of the previous shows.
Sure. There's an article that came up in IFL Science. Title is "Something Strange Happens to Your Taste in Music at Age 30." And it's talking about how your mind is set as to your musical tastes, and that it stays with you the rest of your life. Most people. If you would elaborate.
Well, okay, yeah. So one of the things that it says in my notes here, one of the things that it does say in the article is that musical discovery peaks at about age 24, but that our musical taste is most influenced in our very early teens, our preteens and early teens. I found that to be a particularly, I mean, it is a topic that comes up a lot in the sort of books that we like to read.
Yeah.
About brain science. It is definitely a well-documented set of experiments. And it's a really cool article. Thank you for posting that in the chat, Diana. See, that's what Diana does. Keeps it going in the chat. Got the links up there already. It's a very cool article, so check it out. We've kind of nutshelled it for you there. But I do want to talk about this because it is very important to. Dusty Chin says, as a child of the 80s, this makes me feel like we were musically doomed as a result of our crappy exposure. Yeah, actually, Ben, Dusty Chin, I'm going to run down that rabbit hole real quick. I really am, I promise. Talking about musical histories, when we are DJs, right? We talked before about digging into the musical histories of our clients, especially when we're doing weddings, family events, that kind of thing, where we're going to have several generations of people, and and how some of the questions that I ask are like really digging into like what were the things that you did at the high school talent show kind of things, and what songs did you and your friends sing on road trips, and what did you listen to on the bus, and that kind of stuff. And the reason that I ask those questions is because of exactly this bit of brain science where it tells us that that our music taste is most influenced in those early teens there. So yes, Generation X, Dusty Chin, who I went to middle and high, well, the end of middle school. I met Dusty Chin when I first moved to New Jersey, and we spent high school together. Please no Striper. Oh my gosh, they did a really great version of Winter Wonderland though. Maybe I'll try to find that for Retro Rumpus. That would be fun. Syric Star, I love that I grew up during all of the 80s. Okay, so here's a funny thing, man. We absorb a lot of music vicariously, if that makes sense. We definitely have, especially when you're younger and back in the days when music was not as accessible as it is now, physical media days, you were pretty choosy about how you spent your dollar, and so you would really focus on buying your very, very favorite stuff. You might like a lot of stuff. A lot of us liked a lot of stuff, but we would spend our money on our very favorite records because we were going to play them over and over and over. And we also absorb a lot of music through pop culture itself. It's uh, Music is ubiquitous, right? You go to the mall and you go into different shops and they're all playing different music, um, and you go to the grocery store and like I see people joking about how like they're now part of the Whole Foods music demographic. I've had that experience myself walking into Whole Foods and hearing David Bowie in New Order and being like, yeah, man, this is the best day to go grocery shopping ever because they're playing my songs. Um, yeah, I agree. The 80s were a good time. Ekim, I don't even know how to pronounce your thing either. Like, don't make me pronounce these things in real life. Ekim. Um, but yeah, we absorb an awful lot of music just through the stuff that we are exposed to. Of course, in the case of Generation X, it was going to the movies, it was the stuff that was on TV. We didn't have as many channels, more channels in the 80s when we got cable and MTV and that kind of stuff. But we were exposed to it, and we would sit there and watch MTV, and we would watch it for hours waiting to see one video that we really wanted to see. And so we'd be watching all this other stuff. So we absorbed it and we know it. And at the time, you know, I would say we probably didn't think that much of it. If it wasn't our music, it was kind of like, oh, it's that. You know what I mean? As we have grown older and those cultural references have become more important to us over time because of our extended experiences from that, and a lot of that would include things like going to your friends' weddings and hearing those songs, going to the nightclubs and stuff, like it changes the relevance of those things in our memories over time, and we attach very specific memories to music. Like one of the things I have said many times is that music reminds you of that time when, right? Music itself is frozen time, and it's something that is experienced in time, over time. Interesting thing about our brain is we can take a song and like fast forward through the song, or back it up, or kind of pick it up from the place that we want. We can break them all up in our head. We can a lot of a lot of the fun of remixing and bootlegging is taking songs and breaking them into different time, and we can do this in our minds. We can think of a song and run through the song in our mind, which, by the way, is related to what we were talking about with Tans Machina's question. When we were talking about key.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about this listening back to the show. Um, I never described how I did it before we had the key analyzers, right?
Okay.
And I said, if you didn't have a piano or something, and the way that I do that, the way that I hear it in my mind, is I kind of take the song and I just run through it really fast, and it makes a hum, right? So like Groove is in the Heart, I guess, would be like, you know what I mean? uh Super Freak would be like,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's what I hear in my head. And it's like if you fast forward through it fast enough, you just kind of get the hum that is the root note. And so that's how I've always used key in my mixing, is do they feel right together? Of course, that is a digression from the topic of this article that we're talking about, and talking about musical histories in relation to this bit of brain science. Um, Ekim is fine. All right. David Bowie is being used to lure you into Whole Foods to spend a house payment on some cashews. It's a trick. You know what, man? You are not fucking kidding about Whole Foods and the cashews thing. Like, it is really easy to get sucked into that bulk foods snacks aisle. I know it well, and you know, I've definitely had those regrettable moments when you get to the cash register and you're like, I got how many cashews? That can't possibly be 6 pounds. Mm. And the fucking make it yourself peanut butter. I kind of live too far from a Whole Foods right now. It's been a while. All right, so uh but yeah, you know, the truth of the matter is that you're absolutely right, Ekim, because um that is exactly what they're doing. You know, the whole point of music in grocery stores is actually to slow you down and make you browse. Like, it is a very subconscious trick, but that's why music is ubiquitous everywhere you go. Like I said, you go to the mall and every store is playing music. You go anywhere and they're playing music. You go to the bar, they're playing music. You know, you go to the restaurant, they're playing music. You go to an event, they're playing music. Um, Music is ubiquitous. It's cross cultural. I've started reading a book that Diana mailed to me, and I don't have it here downstairs, so I can't really remember the title and everything. But it was recommended to us by Aussie Rob.
Yep.
Yeah. And one of the things that it quotes in there is that no culture has been discovered. You know, and this is when they're talking about, like, you know, previously uncontacted cultures and that kind of thing. It is really obviously one of those, imperialist perspectives, right? We don't need to dive into that, but no culture has been discovered that does not have music, and of course, you know, I would say since the time of my childhood to now, the theories on primitive music have changed an awful lot, right? Like, you know, there have been theories cast out there that, like, we evolved music by imitating bird song, you know, that we were imitating somehow natural sounds, that kind of thing. But as we've talked before, you know, our modern technology has allowed us to peek inside the brain in real time, and so we see that we have these connections that, you know, go back to our quote unquote lizard brain. I have a mustache hair that is like poking me all wrong. It's driving me crazy. I'm sorry. Um, and and one of the things that it mentions in there too is that there is uh, an emotional sense of elation, that human beings get, from using their voice, from singing. We obviously know that cross culturally, music has been used in many ways to synchronize our brains, and that's what we're still doing today. That's why musical histories are so important, and talking about the brain science behind that is important because we get a deeper understanding of how that works, and again, as DJs and as musicians and as performers, how to use that to our advantage to control our audience, to deliver an experience to the audience. Musical histories. Frantic in the house. Hey, check it out. Frantic, you said you had something to ask today, so make sure that you get those up into the chat for us. Okay. Glad to see you. Uh, Searing Star. If you don't see sharp, you will be flat. Ah, Music geek humor, you gotta love it. All right, so IFL science tells us that our musical taste is influenced most in our early teens, but that our musical discovery peaks at around age 24, or the average is, so to speak. Of course, that means that there's a bell curve there, my friends. That means that some people get stuck earlier, and some people continue to enjoy new musical explorations throughout their lives. I think a few of us fall into that category. Um, is there a why to that? I think that's a good question. Why?
Mm.
Why is it that some people are more open to musical experiences? I mean, some people are simply open to more experiences, but I think that experience begets experience. Like, we joke sometimes about how in the old rave days and the indie club party scene kind of thing, that the way that you would find out where the party was by being at the party. You'd find out where the next party was because you were at the party. That was the
Hmm.
only way to
Yeah.
find out, you
Yep.
know. And I think that I think that probably lends itself to the mindset of people who go clubbing and stay going clubbing over a long period of time too, or definitely more the type of people who have opened themselves to, you know,
Hmm.
new expressions in music, and
Right.
finding the love in that. I think that people that are attached to the arts, I think dancers, people that like to dance, like, and I'm not talking about like they'll get up and dance that couple of times a year or whatever that they go to a wedding. I'm talking about people who go out to dance. You're going to find a lot more openness to new music, people seeking out new music. But interestingly enough, I do think that it's still very, very rooted um, in these taste sort of things. I mean, I can honestly say for myself that, like, my taste in the early teens being very rock and roll and disco oriented. I mean, here I play dark dance music that's like basically rock and roll and disco. It's new. It's old too, but it's new. Um, there's constantly new technologies, right? Like, technology influences um, new forms of music dramatically. Um, and as our technology puts music making into more hands, we find more different forms of expression in music. We had talked before about exposure when we were talking about like Woody Woodpecker and Scott Bradley's music, exposing us to um, different ideas of how music can be made. I still can't remember what the heck his technique is called, and I should have looked that up. But um, but by being exposed to a lot of different music in our youth, a lot of it coming to us ubiquitously. Like, think about Christmas music. Why do you know all these songs? Think about, like, oh gosh, commercials that are like stuck in your head from when you were a kid. Right? How much brain space is being taken up by commercials that are stuck in your head from when you were a kid, or theme songs. That's why I like to put theme songs on my Twitch shows here. It's the TV joke, it was like raised on television joke. Um, but we associate a lot of that music. We absorb a lot of that music into our musical histories. I do think that one way of avoiding getting sort of stuck in the non-discovery mode, I should say, would be access to music. I think that we are experiencing an age now in which the ubiquity of music, um uh how do I say it? It's like it puts a lot of different things in front of us. Like, social media puts a lot of different things in front of us. You know, we've been talking a lot in the background lately about um Wednesday, right? And Goo Goo Muck and the Cramps, and like Kate Bush being used in Stranger Things, and how suddenly these songs are having new life because they've been exposed to a new audience. So it's like, these songs that are 40, 50 years old, even, stuff that, like Goo Goo Muck came out when I was a baby. like, like, um, uh, but, but here they are now being exposed to new audiences, and they are adopting them as anthems of their generation as well. Probably in the same way that, I mean, like, when I was a kid, I was exposed to like a lot of the Beatles and the Beach Boys and that kind of stuff, and like, that stuff is indelible in our musical histories. Like, you know like, I kind of think of, like, I listen to the Beatles stuff and I'm kind of like, yeah, it's like kids music, right? You know what I mean? And like Elvis is like kids music kind of, but like when you listen to it from the perspective of the time, it's a lot of I mean, it is revolutionary music. Like, we listen to Frank Sinatra now and it's like he's the old romantic, kind of thing that our grandparents liked. But like, there was a reason they called them the fucking Rat Pack, man. They were the coolest motherfuckers on the planet. You know what I mean? In the way that, like, it's like, as 80s glam rock kids, we get picked on for the amount of Aquanet that we consumed. But like, not for nothing, Motley Crue were like the coolest motherfuckers on the planet. Everybody wanted to fuck Poison. And so, styles definitely change, and things will continue to change whether we like it or not. And I think a big part uh, uh, of musical discovery is going backwards and going forwards at the same time. Like, the more exposure that you have to music, the more you develop your taste. We've talked about that before. Um, and By digging down some rabbit holes and finding the things that you like personally, it's like you don't have to love everything in a genre. It's not That's not who you are. That's not what your musical history is. That's not what your taste is. What you are, musically speaking, is the music that you like, regardless of the genre. So I do encourage everybody to keep on listening to stuff that's like, if it challenges you, listen to it twice, man. If you're kind of like, I'm not sure how to feel about this, listen to it again. And, I do think it's good to extrapolate into the minds of where the music comes from. It's part of what makes musical history in terms of musicology as well. Is where did it come from? What were the conditions of the time, and why is it revolutionary? You know. So let's see. I did see something go by from
Frantic had a question.
yeah. Where is that? Let's find that. So there's a question. Okay, well, why don't you take care of reading that question out for us there?
Well, so here's a question that I always see. When mixing a song into the next track, what's the best time to bring in the next track?
Hmm.
Example: if your first song is only 1 minute and 30 seconds, is that when you bring? When would you bring in your mix to the next song?
So the track on program is only 1.5 minutes long. That's a very short song. It's like punk rock short.
Oh, he said, oops. First track had only 1 minute 30 seconds left.
Oh, I totally get you. So, yeah, you're counting down. Yeah, we did we did kind of mention that pressure previously in one of the previous episodes here. When you first start to learn to beat match and stuff, like, I mean, again, I'm talking about, completely by ear without using the visual cues, which, by the way, I should mention, something I wouldn't mind running down is the Mixmag article that we were talking about before the show backstage here, titled "How Deaf DJs Are Revolutionizing the Club Experience." And so I'm going to kind of pin that for later as something that is interesting that I'd like to talk about, because digital DJ, like, how do I say this? I want to correct myself from something I said before, um, uh, under this particular condition. But isn't that enticing? Anticipate. All right, so we're talking about having a very short time left on your calendar. When is the best time to mix into? Okay, so some songs, frantic. Um, some songs mix really well natural, like if you let them go out naturally. Like some songs, like I would say, let me frame this in a slightly different way here. Vogue. Let me frame this in a slightly different way. Um, People like songs they know, right? If you're delivering a performance to an audience and they know the songs, right? They know how the songs end naturally. We were talking about that before. You can fast forward and rewind in your head. You this is very much what we talk about when we talk about musical expectations, as in, like, in composition terms, and creating expectation, and in some cases denying expectation, being exciting things. Like, everybody loves the aha moment. They talk about that in mystery writing too. Everybody loves the aha moment, and it's the same, burst of serotonin, the same burst of happy brain chemicals that you get on the dance floor when the DJ is mixing, and people realize what's coming. Right? It's like, what was the old game show? Like, I can name that tune in 4 notes. I can name that tune in 3 notes. They bet on how many notes they could name. And they're just basing it on, the progression, and people do that kind of on the dance floor. Like, I can even use as an example last night when we're in here listening to DJ Loki's set, and he would start mixing the tracks, and we'd be like, "Oh, sweet," like we realize what song is coming in that he's mixing with the song, and it's kind of, and then you get hit with that musical history too. You get the context of that song, what it means to you, and hopefully what it means um to the rest of the, to the audience whose minds that you're synchronized with or synchronizing as the performer. Hopefully you feel the weight of that, and you have that aha moment, and you're like, "Oh, that's really cool. That's the woo." Right? Sometimes, of course, it's delivering something that um they don't expect. You know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of it is like, "Oh, wow, I didn't expect that." um and that's more than half the fun. Ekim, I'll do it for you. Patient. But we will talk about the deaf DJ things. All right, so the question on the table still that I have not really answered at all is, when is the best time to mix out of a track? Well, as always, that depends. If people know the song, um, they kind of want to hear the song. Now there are different styles. I want to say this, like, I am definitely speaking from the perspective of an events DJ, a party DJ, a club DJ um in a scene basically that does not like a quick mix kind of set. Like in hip hop music, it has long been a tradition to play pieces of the songs that are the favorite pieces, or that that by combining the pieces even better, they create a message across them. Playing the breaks and that kind of thing. And so, um, quick mixing is one particular style. Um, I do some quick mixing. It'll depend a lot on the gig, but like I'm thinking about like at the Witches Ball, I do a lot of 2 minute mixing kind of thing because like I can get the bulk of the hook of the thing in the first half of the song, or by cueing into the song and playing like the second verse or something, playing it from the break out of the first chorus or some shit, or by mixing the chorus in and ignoring the verse, that kind of thing. So again, the answer is depends. It depends on what you wish to deliver to the audience, in terms of their expectations or breaking their expectations. Um, Sometimes that will be playing the whole song because the audience will expect to hear the whole song. We talked about this in the first show, I think, right, where I talked about like Round and Round, at the middle school dance, and the DJ cutting it off in the middle of the guitar solo and playing something else, and I was like, no. And so, um you know how do I say this? Like, quick mixing will work in certain formats and that kind of thing, and it's a great device to use when you have tracks that you can mix over a minute and a half. There's You can mix them over a minute and a half. Does that make sense? Like, a lot of the music that is designed for DJs, whether it's extended mixes, club remixes, that kind of stuff, it is meant to be mixed over a long time because, okay, we're doing it all digitally now, but it is still designed in the way that was meant for vinyl, which gives you a fair amount of room so that you can be in your queue and be playing, I call them a bonus beat, you know what I mean? But basically the stripped down beat under what you're playing, so that like while the hook is still going of this thing, you've got this kind of naked beat going under it, so it's easier to hear and to mix in your queue. And um and then you can slide it over. Back in the days with the knobs on the Uri mixers and stuff, uh um it was very, you had to kind of do the crossfade, you know like this. And if you didn't have the outboard EQ mixing and stuff, it was very important to control your output volumes on the tracks that you were mixing in and out of, because it would get boomy very easily. And Okay, so you have a minute and a half left on the song. What you do is you wait for the most natural place for your mix to feel. Like, sometimes I will mix a beat in for a minute and a half because that's sort of what the track wants to be played like. I might loop it for a while. I might It might be something that has a long intro. It might make more sense for me to wait until after a break or something. It's like it starts the last chorus and I've got like 30 seconds or something on the thing while it plays the chorus and the outro, or double chorus and an outro or something. But the thing that I'm mixing in has a melody, or a bass line or something that works along with it, and so I can kind of mash them together for that, you know, for the extended chorus part or something. Like I'll do the chorus and then I'll flip the bass line, and then I'll have the bass line from the thing I'm bringing in, and still have the last the extended chorus on top of it or something. Sometimes the track ends with like just a vocal or something, and so if you carry the beat under that vocal, and then you know bring it in. Last night we were talking about one of the techniques that I use, which is I call starving the bass. And so I'll have the bass EQ down on the mixer, so the kick is not thumping in the sub. You can just kind of hear the top of the kick, and I'll mix it. You hear the top of the kick, and you hear the snare, and kind of all the highs. And I'll mix that under something as something else is fading out. I'll bring in the bass, but I won't bring it past like 2/3, or so I'm still like a few decibels below zero, while the other thing is fading out, so I can make it thinner as the other thing is fading out. So as you're hearing the other thing fade out, it's like you're still hearing it on top of this other thing. I'm not drowning it out. And then when it hits the moment where it goes into the verse, the person starts singing, I pop that bass back in, and you get that nice fat one, and it goes thump, and it kind of completes your mix. So again, Frantic, I know this is probably, there's no hard rule on when the best time to mix out of a track is. um a lot of the creativity that we can express as DJs is how we flip tunes. um I will say this. um how do I say this? A lot of audiences find quick mixing to be kind of annoying, but if you use it sparingly as a trick, it's extremely effective. So, I wouldn't say don't ever do it at a wedding. No, absolutely do it at a wedding, but do it really fucking well, and use it sparingly enough that it gets you woos and not agains. If that makes sense. Like, never beat any trick too much. Like, mixing is one thing, but like, we have all these things that we use, and using the filters and using effects and stuff like that, and breaks and backspins and all these things that we can do, all of which can be really cool. A lot of them are kind of things that you just want to do one off. Quick mixing is something, if you flip a few, you've got the wedding going, and you flip a few like New Jack Swing tunes or something, like you flip your Mark Morrison, and you flip your Dre, and you flip your Snoop kind of thing, and you do some 2-minute mixing, they're probably going to throw their bras at you, because that's something that it works really fucking well for in that particular kind of situation. Your job as a DJ is to know how to judge those situations. You know what I'm saying? Like, we were talking about the witch's ball a few minutes ago in Salem, and I flip a handful of quick mixes in that, because I want to grab this remixed 80s familiar tune, right, that has the elements of the original that are the most recognizable, the shit people sing along with. And if I flip a few of those tracks in a row, it's kind of like, it's like a medley, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
What was Searing's joking about being uh, the jazz master, not jazz masters. What is the what mix masters?
Miss
It was,
Master, yeah.
the ones like Jive Bunny. That was it. That
Mm-hmm,
did the
mm-hmm.
medley mixes. Jive Bunny, right? Jive Bunny.
Tans
Um.
Machina has a question that goes kind of along those lines.
Oh. Tans Machina. What is that question?
How much do you worry about phrasing when mixing?
1,000%. Phrasing is the most important thing. I call it posting. Um, I want all my mixes to land on the post. You know what I mean? Like, I want my mixes to post. I call it the metaphor is signposts uh, along the highway. It's like, um, you want to cross everything. So what we're talking about with phrasing. Oh, good morning, Seth. What we're talking about with phrasing is the bar structure of music. You have it, generally speaking, and I'm going to talk in four terms here. Generally speaking, you have four beats in a bar and four bars in a measure. Those 4/4 meaning that those beats are worth a quarter note each. And so most of your musical phrasing is going to fall in eights, 16s, and 32s. You'll find a lot of repetition in eights, which is why eights are useful for loop. Sometimes fours are.
Mm.
But it's the bar structure of music is um, most of Western music and dance music and disco,
Mm-hmm.
all these things that we do is very much the most common is 4/4. um, the phrasing is often not on the hard beat. You have a lot of songs that start on a beat or a half beat ahead of something, an offbeat, like whoa, Black Betty. Black is the one beat. Whoa, Black Betty, you got that, like a one hi hat up. That's your offbeat, kind of thing. That's your upbeat. Whoa, Black Betty, and so that stuff is incredibly important. Rotten Little Dead Girl, thank you for joining us. Nice to see you last night. Thank you for the blueberry wine. And yes, Ekim, we had the spooky New Year's last night, and it was a blast. And that's what we're in recovery mode from today. And so phrasing super important. I think phrasing is like the absolute most crucial thing, no matter what you're doing, no matter what techniques you're using. Um, the, Phrasing is absolutely having your phrasing not land is like the biggest fucking speed bump. It's like it's worse than a train wreck. It's worse than a train wreck. You really want your bars to line up. And so, I used to joke and say, I'm a DJ, so I'm really good at counting to 4. Wait, who was it that said, music is the pleasure of experiencing mathematics without doing mathematics? That's a should I send Diana down a Google hole trying to find that? Do we remember who said that?
I can't remember.
It was one of the famous mathematicians. Maybe somebody in the audience knows.
I think of.
I'm sorry, Ekim, that you didn't get an alert.
Yeah.
That's Twitch's fucking fault, I'm afraid.
Mm.
I mean, we post everything on Facebook, so if you're following me on Facebook, that's the easiest way to find out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
He said, putting in the plug. But no, we don't remember who said that. It was like Feynman or something. I mean, it was like seriously like one of those famous mathematicians. Anyway, doesn't really matter. What matters is that you get the point of the thing, is that music is very mathematical. I think I've said before that that it's more a way that we analyze music and explain it. Music is something that we experience emotionally, and we like things this way. We are evolved to like things this way. Our ancestors liked things this way, and they fucked, and therefore we like things this way. Rhythmic structures are very, very powerful. We've talked about this before. Lizard brain, we were talking about a little while ago. And so yes, phrasing, landing on those beats is really important. This came up a couple of weeks ago on Art of Rock, right? It was Bootsy Collins, I think, that said funk lives in the one beat.
Yes.
And of course many other musicians have expressed something similar. Um, the thing that I do want to say about that too is that and I mentioned this in Art of Rock because, of course, it was Carl from Angel Spit who runs Art of Rock, and I have done a handful of remixes for Angel Spit. One of the ones that I did is V is for Voltage, and one of the things that I had fun with doing that remix was that I changed the emphasis beat to the 2. So the 1 is kind of a hole, and then everything hits on the 2. And so it's kind of an interesting way of changing the musical expectation. And I probably got that trick from trance music, like Infected Mushroom or something like that. That sounds like something Infected Mushroom would do. But I'm not really sure. But of course, when you're mixing that, the 1 is still where the 1 is, and the 2 is still where the 2 is, and all of that. And so sometimes it's harder to hear. Like I said, some things don't start on the 1 beat. The emphasis of the syllables fall on the 1 beat. So what you do is you find where does it land on the 1 beat. And so when you're down in the tech and you're looping, is it better to loop on whoa, or is it better to loop on black? I'm going to leave that up to you. Personally, I like to loop it on whoa and start my loop on that offbeat time, and that way I can pop it in and pop it in. I've got that. It's like, I can use it as a sample, for the offbeat, because, if I'm mixing it into something that has like phrasing that does start on the 1, the chorus or the hook starts on the 1 beat, I give it that whoa, and then it does that thing, staying alive. Totally. um Staying alive being, one of those things, like that's why they use it for CPR, like staying alive, because everything is like right sitting on the beat, kind of thing. um and and so to land this conversation about phrasing, because I realized that we just have a few minutes left to go already. Holy shit, this show goes by fast. I guess we'll have to talk about deaf DJ culture in the next show. So
Sure.
much longer a wait on that patient Ekim than we were going to originally try for. But oh geez, you're awesome. Diana posting the V is for Voltage remix up there. Jeez. She's great, right? It's like I said, that's, that's what you're here to do, is like keep it on top, man. Keep it on top of it. All right, so let's see. Let's land this conversation about phrasing and say absolutely, like um really examine the structure of the songs that you're mixing, and yes, you really want to post those mixes. You like even if it's got like a long fade out kind of thing, you want it to land in the right place as much as possible. I mean, sometimes they don't always land the way you want them to. Yeah, I had one last night that I was like, fuck, I rushed it. you know should have given that one more time around the fountain. A reel around the fountain. So yeah. Uh what I really try for in my mixing is to make it feel natural. So that that the one song laps into the next song, and it that is entirely dependent on phrasing. It's knowing where your one beat is. We call this knowing where your one beat is, knowing where your one is, and which one you're on, because you've got 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4. So it's that 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, 1 2, and what you're really looking for is that home beat, that one that starts the phrase. And again, depending on the track that you're playing, you know, you might have something that makes more sense to use 32 beats. You might have something that makes more sense to use 4 beats. You know what I mean? You know, in your loop or in your mix, like sometimes it's best just to be like, you know, you have something that ends and you start something else, but you really want to try to give it the groove so that the one still, even if you have space, you know, like I do think it's important to have some space in your mixes sometimes, you know, especially if you're sort of going from something that ends naturally and you're changing tempo to something with something that begins naturally, maybe with like dot 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 da boom kind of thing. You want to land it so that that boom, even though you've got, you know, a 1 2 3 4 boom, that means that you have to start it on the 4 beats before that fucking boom if you want to include that drum intro. You know, so if something lands on the one, then you want to start it before 4 beats before that one. Dot 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 boom. One and a two and a three and a boom. You know, like however many beats it is, it might not. You know, it could be literally anything. It could be any amount of beats that the intro or the melody is off centered from. It's something that is interesting in music. I myself, like as a songwriter and singer, um, I don't really like to start my phrase on a one. I would say I do it more maybe in the choruses, but like I like to have things that kind of slide around the beats on the phrase and where I start, you know, like to have some space or to go before it, you know, kind of things, because it does change how it feels in a piece of music. And one thing that I have noted in remixes is, you know, if the one beat gets slid over from where I expect the phrasing to be, it kind of, it's like nails on the chalkboard of my soul. And so kind of, I guess one last quick one on phrasing, and that also relates to Frantic's question about how long should you mix it. I want to use as an example one of our favorite classics from the OOs there. um Be Born Batten im inner Frau. um at the end of that song, it gives you 32 beats out, I think it is. I think it's 32 beats out. But right before that, it does this off time thing where it recounts, and so it kind of does a 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4 1. Right. So it adds this like 4 beat little you know kind of thing. And so if you are already mixing in on there, suddenly your 1 beat phrase is shifted off by 4. Right. So it's better to wait and let it go through that thing and then land your one and again adjust into, you know, goose and drag your way into the thing if you start a little faster, a little slow, because you're gonna because it's a weird count, you know. And use that last 32 beats to mix it. You know, even if that means using 16 of them to line up your mix and 16 to execute it. um and so, you know, you might not get a long ass mix out of it, but it's, you know, how do I say this? Nobody is impressed by how long your mixes are. It's what you do with them that matters, right? Sometimes the very best and most emotionally powerful mixes are the simplest ones. Sometimes the hardest ones are the ones that are just pressing the button in your open fader, because they are the most risky ones. You're not listening to it beforehand, you're diving into it. And it relies entirely on your timing, and essentially you're thinking as a drummer or as a musician, because your timing is super crucial when your faders are open and you're hitting play. There's no twice. That's what she said, Ekem. You got me. You got me. That is exactly what I meant. And the question is, yes, Red Seth, it's that little dead girl that we know from Haven back in the days when B-board Benton was new and fresh on the Haven dance floor, those kind of things. Yeah, we had a very nostalgic night last night. DJ Loki was pulling the strings. I was definitely, as I joke, the more we drink, the more nostalgic it gets, and of course, every New Year is Halloween, so we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, we do.
I do think that we ought to wind this up though, because it's 3 o'clock and that is our hour. So I want to thank you all for joining us for Musically Minded. Thank you so much for the good questions.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Frantic, thank you for coming by. Tans Machina, thank you. Great questions, and very well related questions too. It's always nice when you get something that mixes well and you can talk
Right.
about two things at the same time. We definitely have a lot of ideas for future conversations.
Mhm.
As I mentioned, I would like to talk about the deaf DJ culture stuff at some point, and I do think one of the questions that we are kind of itching to talk about is like, what does being a DJ even mean?
I would like to run that down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to get more insight. That's definitely going to be a conversation. We're going to demand more insight from Diana's experience as well. And okay, so let's see. Before we close out the show, what do we need to do? I should let people know what's going on one more time. Of course, Diana, my extraordinary co-host and your hostess assist with the mostess assist, has been letting you know all the good things to check out. This week we've got the Tiger Squawk takeover for New Music O'Clock, and Gothsicles Brian, the Squawk Man himself, is going to be hosting on Saturday. It's a retro rumpus. We've got Syrinx joining us to do the amazing mashtastic things that Syrinx does for retro rumpus. It is always a pleasure. And I'm gonna say it is always a jaw-dropping pleasure. Very cool stuff. And
And I'll be on Space Couch next week.
I was just gonna ask you. She's like chomping at the bit over here to remind you that she's gonna be on the Space Couch next Sunday. I hadn't gotten to Sunday yet. After Musically Minded, of course.
After Musically Minded.
Well, we'll be rating over. I'll try to make sure we end a few minutes earlier so that we can raid over in time to not miss a minute of DJD42 on Space Couch with the Squawkmeister himself. And of course that means that she's going to be ditching out on us a little bit early, but what can you do? So please join us for all these things that we do. The live shows every Saturday night, New Music O'Clock every Wednesday, and Musically Minded here every Sunday. And thank you for your support on Patreon, both of MTV TV and on Addambombb. Thank you for checking out the music and the remixes and all that stuff too. And thanks for checking out all this other stuff that we find for you. And I think I should say one more time, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
So cheers to all of you, my dears. And let's hope for an awesome 2023. We're going to keep doing this stuff. And I guess on that note, I'll start the outro. Thank you again for joining us, everybody.
Can we